Oh. Haven't seen any update.
I haven't seen anything. I think we said that we should make yours.
Yeah, that's.
Full.
Yeah, she's.
Okay, well, I guess we
Where did
can
you have to-
go ahead and get started because it's 5:31. Hopefully folks can hear me online. Okay, Daniel, could you give me a little like yes or no? You can hear me? Maybe.
Yeah, we sound right in
Yeah,
front of it.
there. I can bring this over. We can kind of see ourselves as we talk, I guess. Okay. How many do we need for quorum?
7?
7? Okay,
Okay.
we got 7. Okay, all right, we can approve the notes. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Willow. I'm the City Eugene staff representative for this meeting. Before the chairs convene the meeting, I have a few reminders and introductory words. I want to begin by acknowledging that tonight's meeting is being held on Kalapuya Alihi, the traditional indigenous homelands of the Kalapuya people who continue to make contributions in their communities here and across the land we now refer to as Oregon. The purpose of the Active Transportation Committee is to advise the City of Eugene staff and community organizations and partners on the implementation of Eugene's pedestrian and bicycle strategic plan, to represent the community and constituent interests in transportation planning decisions, and to provide feedback to staff on projects relating to walking and bicycling. Eugene City staff will consider recommendations from the ATC along with input from other members of the public during decision-making processes. Please keep in mind that this meeting is being both recorded and live streamed to YouTube, meaning that it can be viewed on the City of Eugene Transportation YouTube channel both right now and in the future. The live transcription feature for closed captioning has been enabled, and all verbal and written commentary will be available as the public record. Today's meeting will begin with 15 minutes of public comment. The public comment period is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the Active Transportation Committee on transportation-related issues. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. We'll begin with those joining us online, and then we'll move to folks in person who may want to speak. So if you are online and you would like to speak, you can use the raise your hand feature now, and the chairs will call on you when it's your turn, and I will unmute your microphone and bring you over as a panelist. When you are speaking, please give your name, your city of residence, and your ward if you live in Eugene or neighborhood. And we will take the public comment from those here in person afterwards. Okay, let's see if any attendees are interested in giving public comment. If you are interested in giving public comment online, please use the raise your hand feature. Okay, it doesn't look like we have anyone online who's hoping to give testimony, so we can move on to the folks who are here in person. Do both of you wish to speak today, or? Okay, well, yeah, we'd love to hear from you. As a reminder, please give us your name, city of residence, and your ward if you live in Eugene or neighborhood.
Okay, cool. My name is Steve Schilling. I live in Eugene. I'm in the 8th ward up on, I guess it would be the Southwest Hills. I'm here this evening to talk about Warren Street. It's a beautiful street, but it's a miserable transportation street. And it's terrible for folks who have disabilities. It's non-existent for those who are bikers or who are pedestrians or who are students. And I'm speaking now about the stretch of Warren between Timberline at its most northern terminus and Summits Terrace at its most southern terminus. It's about 0.2 of a mile stretch. Never has it had a sidewalk on either side of the street, and all of the parts of the streets that connect into that street do have sidewalks. So somebody let down the ball here back when these homes were put in. The vegetation on the west side of the street is growing so far out into the street that it's really dangerous. And I would really ask city staff, I've spoken to Mr. Groves about this. I'm gonna talk to you guys about it. I'm gonna try to do everything I can over the next period of time while you have this bond money now available to you. To see if I can get this stretch of road somehow improved, either with a pathway or a sidewalk, or even if just the city asks the neighbors to clean up the berries and the brush and all of the trees and vegetation that are growing out in the street. We have kids that are walking to Churchill High School and Kennedy Junior High School and other grammar schools in the area that just can't go down the street. They have to detour over to Timberland, which isn't a whole lot better, but it's better than this street because they can at least get off the street. You can't get off the street here. Persons who are disabled can't navigate the street. People who wish to bike are taking their lives in their hands if they go down this street. It really is a street that warrants, I think, some attention or some enhanced prioritization by you in the city. To, while you have this funding, do something there. People have been communicating to the city for about 15 years. I have a friend of mine who's on the homeowners association with me. I'm the president of the Summit Homeowners. I'm also on the Churchill Area Neighbors Board and the Churchill Site Council, and the school people are terribly concerned about this stretch of road because they have students that would like to walk it. Some do walk it, but they take their lives in their hand on a couple corners there and getting clobbered. And if rain or a storm or snow or ice came in, we often have that up in that particular area, it becomes impassable. So I don't know how people would get off the mountain if they had to, if a fire were to come into that area, it would be impossible to get off. So it's a really stretch of road. I know there's probably lots of other stretches of road all over Eugene that aren't perfect and would certainly use some improvement, but I want you to go look at this piece. I think the city needs to go take a peek at it, and they need to do something about prioritizing some kind of improvement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you very
testimony.
much.
I got that all in the notes and we'll, as staff over here, we'll pass it along and get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, did you get your email on the side?
I did, yeah.
Okay,
Can I respond very briefly?
yeah,
Is that
of
okay?
course, yeah.
A couple of things that for the, I don't know if you wouldn't mind doing this, but for the overgrown vegetation, if you call Public Works Maintenance
I have.
and they haven't addressed
I
it.
have not gone,
Okay.
I've spoken to what's called nuisance vegetation, I've
Okay.
spoken to urban forestry, I've
Got
spoken to code enforcement. I've spoken to safe schools, safe transit, safer schools. They don't have any money or any
Right.
ability to go up and do anything.
Okay, and then I think part of the challenge related to that might be that the west side of the street, those properties are not annexed into the city. I don't know if that's why we don't.
You just required the Ganson Apartments down right at the beginning to do a sidewalk. Partially up the road, I mean, it's only about a 50-yard sidewalk.
Oh, really?
It
Okay.
dies.
Okay,
You require them to do a sidewalk. I don't know whether that's Lane County or City of Eugene, but obviously these homes that were built there were built so long ago that I understand that nobody put a sidewalk in. There's a piece of my property that doesn't have a sidewalk on it, and I don't know quite why. Or my neighbor actually doesn't have a sidewalk there, and it's up on Summit Sky. But I've made contact with these folks. If somebody was just going with a weed whacker and clean back the berries and the trees, you'd at least buy some extra space for cars. There's two school buses every day in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, drive up and down this street.
we,
And they're
yeah.
gonna have a head on there.
So when developers develop in our urban growth boundary, that's when we require them to be annexed into the city. And then we have sort of more control over that property. I'm not excusing it, you know, it seems wrong that we're not enforcing vegetation growing into our right of way. And then I think part of historically what's happened here is that a lot of the properties that are developed on the east side of the street, they don't take their access off of Warren, they come off of other streets and they're like public, they're like PUDs or condominium developments that don't have driveways on Warren. So it's kind of the back of everything and yeah, so, but I agree with you, we need to look at it, and I think it's definitely something we'll look at with the bond measure that passed. And what, you know, whether this is one of the projects that we can do, so I would encourage you to keep advocating.
You know, I
for it.
will say, I can't walk that street. It's taken my life. chance if I walk down that street. I think for the disabled community, really have an obligation to do something. I think so probably a 504 or something like that. Legal obligation to require the city to intervene or something. It is a major thoroughfare. I mean, if the buses are using it, then you can understand that it's not just an alternative path. It's a major exit from that area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Housing going in, if there's, you're right. I said I've been up there recently and you're right. I mean, there's an amazing amount of development going on.
Yeah.
So this,
And more to come. There's a huge development that's coming in right off of Summit Terrace, 100 homes or something. And then you've got something off of Timberline.
it's worth a field trip. It's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, so we have no more. Public comment? Thank
Other
you.
than saying congrats to about the bond measure. to everybody.
Okay, so then we will, oh, I apologize, by the way, Mary's out of town, so you're stuck with me again. I would also, since we're in person, I would encourage you to silence your phones if you haven't already. So the next item on the agenda is to approve the summary notes of the October 22nd, 2022 meeting. Anybody have any questions, comments, or anything about them? If not, we will entertain a motion to approve.
A motion to approve.
Okay, second. Okay. All in favor? Okay, moving right along.
So folks online.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, we got +1 approved from Daniel. Okay, thanks, folks.
okay. All righty, so the next thing is our sidewalks letter and the bond measure. And I sent out the sidewalks letter to you, and it's been a while since we approved it. Just, I don't know if you had a chance to read it. In summary, we basically outlined the reasons that we feel like sidewalks are important. And basically asked for a system of prioritization based on everything from location to cost to accessibility to you know, equity and all that sort of stuff. For funding, well, we've got at least some funding, that's great. And to have a staff person who's responsible for sidewalk stuff. So that's what we asked for, and I'll turn it over to Ron then to.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Thank you for sending the letter again. We're still working on what our process will be for determining what projects we propose to city council for the bond measure. I imagine there'll be a public involvement component of that. But we haven't finalized the process yet. But that's my recommendation internally is that we should be engaging the public, including the ATC. So we're still working that out. We're also talking about how to prioritize projects. So we're developing a prioritization methodology that includes the kinds of things that you were just talking about. And we also are going to be talking about sidewalk funding. Sidewalks is one of the type of projects that we would fund through that. One of the things we're talking about internally is kind of like some of the examples you shared from other communities is rather than just using the bond to pay for sidewalk in front of certain properties, having the property owner pay a share of the sidewalk, as has historically been done in Eugene. As the example of the apartments on Warren, the developers typically build sidewalk. Historically in Eugene, probably it stopped kind of in the early 2000s, but the city had a program where we would actually require property owners to pay for sidewalks, and we would develop what are called local improvement districts, where the people would be assessed to build a sidewalk in front of their house or their property. And that went away. There's some challenges with how we did it. And so one of the things, like for example, a property owner, the assessment costs also include the engineering piece. And the local improvement district would include all the sidewalks that we would be building in front of people's homes. But any one individual or property owner could opt out and hire their own contractor. Then the engineering costs amongst the 9 properties that were left instead of the 10. So if another 3 people dropped off, the cost for the people that were left would just go up and up and up because they're still bearing that fixed engineering cost. So what I've proposed internally and we'll be talking about is the idea of having a fixed cost for property owners, perhaps like per square foot
Like you don't have to pay more than X dollars per square foot to get a sidewalk in front of your home. And then we would use the bond money to pay the balance. In Missoula, there was an example where there was a maximum amount of $2,000, I think, that property owner would have to pay. And I thought that was an interesting example. So, that was for sidewalk repair, but I think you could use that same principle to apply to new sidewalks too. So I think those are the kinds of things we'll be looking at, is how to have some kind of a cost sharing that doesn't put too big of a burden on any one property owner. We might treat commercial and residential properties differently. I'm not sure, but that's a possibility. So that's sidewalk infill, and I really hope that we do that there is a sidewalk infill component to the bond measure. I think, when we think about walkability, the three things that are top of mind for me are: is there a sidewalk? Are there tripping hazards on the sidewalk? And I'll get back more to that in a minute. We talked about sidewalk repair. We had Eric Johnston a couple meetings ago. And then the third thing is, can you safely get across the street? So I think when you think about the pedestrian elements of the bond measure, I think that those are probably the three big ones, especially sidewalk infill and safer pedestrian crossings. In terms of sidewalk repair, right now the city is moving to a 2-year budget process where we develop a 2-year budget rather than an annual budget. And there's an internal process we're going through right now, mostly looking at how to save money because we're anticipating a big budget deficit. But also it was also open to employees to suggest other ideas, including for generating more revenue. And so Eric Johnston, along with the woman, Carrie Peterson, who's in charge of our green infrastructure program, together put in a proposal for really considerably expanding our sidewalk repair program and actually charging more to property owners so that there's more full cost recovery, because the challenge was the city just didn't have enough money to support that. And that was why over time we weren't able to mount a very effective sidewalk repair program. So that's what we're looking at doing, is having and there would be a low income subsidy for lower income homeowners. But the idea is to have a more robust sidewalk repair program based on property owners paying for the sidewalk repair. I thought there were some interesting ideas in your letter, examples of other places doing it differently. And we could certainly talk about that. I'd like to sort of see if this sticks. But I know there's some places like that, like Corvallis, that have it as part of their utility bill, and other things like that. I kind of wonder if now is a good time to be talking about new fees or that sort of thing. Also, like, just so folks know, the one difference between Eugene and Corvallis is Corvallis, they own their electric utility and we don't. Ours is there's a relationship, but it's independent. And so we can't just tell you need to do this. It's really at their discretion. So they already collect quite a few utilities for us, but I think the way they see it is it needs to have a nexus to either water or electric. And it's hard. I think it's kind of hard to make the case that sidewalks makes a nexus to those things. So that's part of the challenge with having it be a utility fee, which I like. I mean, I love the idea of a utility fee, but for the city to create our own utility, there's a lot of administrative costs that would really cut into the how much we would actually, the amount of money we would net out of that. So that's what. And then I think one thing I told you is I'm hiring a new staff person one of the assignments I want to give them is help us figure out sidewalk policy and really focus in on this, and also be to kind of herd the different folks at the city to work more effectively collaborate better on it. And we're scheduling interviews for that position, so there's a light at the end of the tunnel a little bit. We only have 2 candidates we're interviewing now, so hopefully one of them will be lined up taking the job, or that will like them. So that's what I got. Questions, comments?
I don't know if somebody already asked, do sidewalks include alleyways, or is that something
Separate.
So you said that Eric Johnson's got some ideas on how to fund it.
Right.
Would that require council approval?
It would be integrated into the budget. So they wouldn't necessarily see it. It would be something that comes before the budget committee for their review. Sorry, there's a little fly based. It was something that comes before the budget committee for their review, but it wouldn't necessarily be something on a council agenda.
Okay.
And they do typically, the budget committee will see, one night they might have public works as the topic, and so maybe they would hear what are the different proposals. And just for folks who aren't familiar, the budget committee is made up of the city council plus additional residents of Eugene who serve on the budget committee. I think it's kind of, I'm not exactly, some of you may know better than I, but I think it's a similar number to the number of city councilors as opposed to the other, and then they make a recommended budget, and then it's up to the city council's discretion as to whether to adopt that or not.
Yeah, I'm curious, I guess, right, we have really good, the engineers go out and they look at pavement, and so the pavement bond measure, you guys have done a really great job prioritizing. We'll save more money by doing this street. I'm just wondering, I guess my assumption is that sidewalk, we don't check out the sidewalks as much as we check out the roads. I'm just thinking like in terms of like sidewalk repair and how we get the best bang for our buck. Do we have anything or can we do anything like that?
Do you have a response to that?
No, but I hope Anne does. So I just wanted to put her on the
I
spot.
mean, I think
Yeah,
Erickson, they did
Yeah.
like the downtown university area like several years ago, and it was like a huge amount of
Yeah.
backlog, and they were like, oh, this is like more than we can handle, but go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Anne, aren't you having students do a sidewalk inventory?
Yep, so we're planning that this year, starting with data collection in January or February. So Rob, Willow, bunch of staff, I emailed you an update, I think on Monday or Tuesday about that. Just to get your all's approval and making sure that's a useful tool to you. But our goal is to start probably in the downtown, maybe the downtown area, and kind of like we did with the bike rack survey, expand outward. So start, depending on how long it takes students, and that was kind of the point of my email, which is how fine grained detail do you want? Do you want things like slopes and cracks, or do you want just here's a problem, take a picture? And so that's a question for staff, but that is a goal we have for the year with the students to create a pretty comprehensive inventory of where sidewalk disrepair exists.
Well, we should probably move Eric Johnson to that if we could do that.
Okay.
That, because I think it's really ultimately like his work group is the one that would respond to that, so.
Silencing yourself.
Somebody at the-
I think it's probably somebody at the door.
Other thoughts, or questions?
Well, can you remind us how much money there is from the bond measure per year for sidewalks, and
Sure.
how much would it take so that like 20 years from now, we didn't feel like we had a sidewalk problem?
I
I'm
don't
not
know.
saying that everything is perfect, but.
Yeah.
How much realistically per year to really make a dent in the problem would you need?
I can't really answer that question, but I can tell you that. So the bond measure has $15 million set aside for walking, biking, street trees, safety, and then there's some flexible funding. So my recollection is it was 5 million for walking projects, 3 million each for biking and safety, 2 million, I think, for street trees, and then 2 million for more flexible opportunistic. Is that up to 15?
So it's like $1 million.
It does.
for sidewalks.
So like $1 million a year for sidewalks, yeah. I mean, I think that could
How
get,
much sidewalk do you get for $1 million?
I'm not sure, I think probably a decent amount, but I mean, part of it depends on where it is too. So for example,
If you're in a
we gotta,
flattish.
well, here's something I just learned is that if there's a lot of driveways, it's more expensive. Because you have to do a lot of more, so we just we just cut out part of a project because. And we'll probably fund it through the bond, it was from a grant because the bids came in really high and we had to cut something. And so the part we cut was where a certain street that had less of driveways. This is what Reed told me, because that was a lot more expensive than another sidewalk we wanted to build that was fewer driveways. Also, like a setback sidewalk is less expensive because you're just crossing each driveway at grade. Versus when you have a I think the one we cut was a curbside sidewalk where there was a lot of driveway, because when it's curbside, then you have to make sure you're meeting like ADA at every driveway. Whereas if you're set back, the driveway is just crossing it flat, and then the driveway apron is happening like in the tree planting strip zone. Does that make sense? And then usually too, the driveway apron could be more gradual. So it kind of depends if there's slopes. I mean, I think Warren Street, sorry to say, but I think will be really expensive because it's not flat behind the curb there, there's definitely some grade. Some streets you can actually take the parking out and say, we're gonna build a sidewalk in the street. Like, Lane County did that on a street called Hyacinth once, and I thought that was kind of an interesting project and a creative way to deal with some obstacles. So that's another approach we could look at, depending on the street and, you know, what the neighborhood would support. That sort of thing. So.
Yeah.
So it seems to me one role the ATC could play in this, because my understanding is that there's not a decision-making matrix.
Yeah,
Yeah, so once there's an inventory, then there would be an opportunity for the ATC to be able to say, here are the criteria that we think are important to, whether it's maybe connectivity or equity or something else.
Yeah.
So that those funds are used in a way that's consistent with what citizens want.
And even how you divide up between infill versus repairing and,
Yeah,
you know. It's,
Right. I think that I like the way you're approaching it, Ellen, and I think especially like, where can you do smaller projects that create that connectivity? Looking at things like routes to school, where vulnerable populations, probably some geographic equity too. So, I think there's a lot of things we would be balancing here. Access to transit. Generally, we're looking at streets that already have a curb on them, not what we call unimproved streets. We can do sidewalk on unimproved streets. We've done some before. It's kind of very situational. Sometimes there's like swales and things that make it really challenging.
Looks like Anne has her hand raised.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add is I think, and this could be somewhere the ATC can think about too, but also staff is when we create this inventory, my only fear always in data collection is that I don't collect all the data, or we don't collect the data that ultimately we want for decision making. And so if we can think about, what are the different pieces that we want to make sure that the students all collect, I think that will help that ultimate decision making. So it sounds like the quality, this is the inventory quality piece, but there could be a lot of different ways we measure that. And then I agree, the ATC, plugging in with where are the sidewalks, the network and connectivity that we probably won't measure since there's already an inventory of that. But just another kind of piece to think about, because I want to make sure that when the ATC decides, we have as much high quality info that we need to make decisions, or the staff need to make decisions.
So as I understand it, based on the bond measure, by this time next year, we actually have to present a list of all the bike bed safety tree projects that you're gonna do. And so is that literally, we're gonna do this, the sidewalk on this block, we're gonna do a sidewalk on this block, we're gonna fix that sidewalk there. I mean, it's literally
Kind of.
granular.
That city council is supposed to approve it by November 1st.
Mhm.
So we probably want to present to them quite a bit before then. And I'd say that that level of detail, I'm not sure yet, exactly, but yeah, that's kind of the idea. I know for street trees, they're talking about having a more programmatic approach, but I think for the transportation projects, there's probably gonna be an expectation that it's more detailed.
for 5 years, for the whole thing.
Also, it could be, they could amend it.
And I think the bond measure did talk about public input too, which.
Right.
Everybody wants their sidewalks fixed. It's like.
Well, so that's another thing is we're probably focused on busier streets where that's where people are more at risk of when you're walking in the street. So like this grant I'm talking about, like some of the streets that we're gonna build, and I'm not exactly sure what we cut, but one is a sidewalk on Garden. There's part of Garden Way right near Harlow Road that's on the west side has no sidewalk. That's a busy street. And it's not the kind of street where you'd say, well, you can walk on the other side of the street, like sometimes on a local neighborhood street, if you have sidewalk on one side, that's acceptable. Another street is the one that I think we cut out is North Danabo. So this is from Barger going south from Barger Drive to Danabo Elementary, and that's the one that has all those driveways. It's like a neighborhood collector, not super busy, but it's a route, it's a school route. And then another one that I think we're keeping is Hilliard, from like 36 to going south on the east side does not have sidewalk on it, so we're going to build a sidewalk on that street. So those are just some examples, sort of busy, not the busiest streets in Eugene, but busy. Another one that I'd like to see is there's a part of Burleson between 18th and 11th that's missing sidewalk, and that's a high-speed street in an area with a lot of apartments. I think to me that's sort of a no-brainer. You know, there's others areas like Dana Bow, north of West 11th, more in Eugene, West Eugene wetland area. High-speed street, but it would be, there's some bus stops there. It'd be great to get sidewalks, but I don't know that I don't know that that would score very well. I don't know that I'd put it at the top of the list. So,
Since these sort of topography issues that you have to deal with to get people's driveways in, I mean, most driveways are to keep, people's personal vehicles parked. Maybe that should be the part that homeowners pay for, and then the other stuff that's less expensive, that could be the city. Because essentially, it sounds to me that, we're not doing sidewalks because we have to make these concessions for people to have their private vehicle parked and their driveway. I'm not sure if we're talking about equity, maybe that's not. That's the point.
It's an interesting thing. But yeah, it does sound like having some sort of matrix so that you can be accountable to, okay, this is how we decided these streets, and there's, as I say, there's a lot of interesting people getting their sidewalks fixed, and you're gonna have to be able to justify why you chose the ones you did. And Alan and I are gonna have to say that you did it on the SRP, the street repair review panel. Anyhow, we've got 3 minutes till
Okay.
lunch. So
Well, my concern is, I bike and walk a lot in the west of downtown. And, that is, crumbling. I think it's the best way to describe the sidewalks there. And also it's an area because it's main transportation. So it has a lot of people that are disabled, that use that in our house in there. And a tremendous amount of people walking on it, so, or make that no other form of transportation. So both 11th and 13th get a lot of traffic on those sidewalks, and it's just crumbling away between each block. It's all crumbling because it's been there since whenever they put the sidewalks in. So pre-World War II. So that is an area that is tremendous use and is really crumbling.
on the west end of downtown, like between
Yeah, the west side.
Willamette to Lincoln,
11th And 12th and 13th and,
like what's cross
How far
streets?
west?
Would you
oh,
say?
just all the way down, just keep, I mean, you start out by the library,
Got it.
and head, I mean, it's in bad shape all the way
Okay.
along.
Yeah, thanks.
If you were to walk it or even take your bike on it, so,
And a lot of big trees, right? Like in a lot.
well, yeah, but it's just crumbling.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
That's part of the problem.
So, do we want to ask I guess we'd do like the infrastructure committee, to start working on the matrix idea? Was that sound?
We're gonna be developing a scoring criteria,
Yeah.
so. I mean, if you wanna make some I wouldn't encourage you to do your own matrix, but if you wanna just say, these are what some criteria we think you should consider. But we're looking at things like equity, safety, ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Those are some of the things we're looking at, so
If you're willing to share that matrix before finalizing it, the infrastructure subcommittee could test drive it for you.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
We have, I think, did we ever bring our matrix? We have a matrix that we've been using. And but we're trying to make it better, so. Have we ever shared that with you guys? I can't remember. It would have been Logan. Okay.
And if anybody's got spare time over Thanksgiving, you could see if other cities have created a similar matrix and maybe do it.
All right, thank you.
What's that?
So thank you for your interest.
Okay,
in
well,
this.
thanks for sharing it this way. Wish there was a quick and easy answer that you could move on, but it's a start. And congratulations on getting the bond. That is very helpful. Okay, oh, my people disappeared.
Oh,
Oh, nobody had their hands up.
There's no hands, like.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is ATC recruitment, and I'm assuming.
Yeah, I actually made a small little presentation, which is why I had kind of brought this back up. So I'm just gonna share this screen real quick for the people online. Mostly just so y'all had something to look at while I talked for a few minutes. Okay, so it is November right now, which means that in December, a couple of our members are going to be retiring from the ATC. And that means we have to do some recruitment. So I have set the application due date November 28th. So that's the Monday after Thanksgiving, in case people want the Thanksgiving break to kind of fill out their applications. We will review the applications, we meaning staff will kind of review the applications, consider who we want to bring in for interviews. We'll have some interviews and then select some new members for the committee and do their orientation in early January in time to have them join for the first ATC meeting of the year, January 12th. And then that hopefully puts us at mid-February doing an ATC retreat. And that's something that the chairs have been kind of percolating on for a while, and we're hoping to move forward with for February. The exciting piece about the retreat is that we want to invite past members to join. So those of you who are finishing your term, you might be able to come and offer some of your expertise and experience on the ATC to us if you are interested. So that's a quick timeline of what we're looking at for ATC recruitment. And I had some things, basically, because we have 15 minutes to talk about this, some things for us to consider. The first thing I wanted to talk about was that we have 3 open positions. Basically, we're going to have 3 people who are leaving the ATC, and I wanted to confirm that that is how many open positions we have, and if there is anybody else who is not going to return their term. So I'm going to bring our people back over here so we can see them.
That's what Alan and Josh.
Alan, Josh, and Ann are retiring from ATC. Is there anybody else I did send an email out asking you to let me know if you were planning to, and those are the only 3 that I got. I just wanted to double check while we've got everybody here that folks are planning to stay for retirement. But it sounds like people want to stay, which is cool. Okay, well, that's good. So I think there are a few folks who aren't here today, so I'll double check with them. And then once I get that information, we'll kind of move forward. We have 3 open positions to fill. One of the questions I have up on the screen is, do we need 15 members? So the way the ATC bylaws are written, the ATC should consist of 10 to 15 members. 15 is our maximum, 10 is our minimum. With 3 people retiring, that puts us at 12. We could not recruit, would be an option, and we could just sit with 12 members, or we could just bring on 1 person if we have some really excellent candidates or something like that. So that was something I maybe thought I could throw out to the committee and see if folks have thoughts on. Sure.
Well, I guess it's work for you, but maybe there are some people out there who would be interested in maybe just put out the call, and if you don't get all 3, we get how many ever, or the number you get, I guess.
Okay.
I suppose more voices are better.
Yeah, and I would say especially when we go into having subcommittees, it's hard for a subcommittee to be effective if you don't have at least 4 or 5 people on it, and if you cut down to a number of members, you could get pretty slim pickings for them, subcommittees.
Yeah, I'd vote for as large as, a reasonable number of people, more people for that reason, because for people whose jobs and whose family commitments mean that it's very hard for them to be really effective parts of a committee as well as part of the ATC. And I think you just have to account for that, is that people cannot always, give it as much as other people. And so in order to have some diversity, you've got to allow for people's different lifestyles. I mean, in terms of what we're missing, we don't have many, full-time pedestrians. We don't have many people who really use walking as a primary method of getting around, say walking on bus, we mostly have, we're mostly a cycle group, lots of cyclists or rollers, interesting.
That's a question. We used to have Pete Knox on the committee.
Yeah.
So we're at 12 right now.
We're
at 15, and we're gonna lose 3. Shouldn't we have had a space for losing Pete, or did we add someone at that point?
I think we had, Justin, you came in when Pete left, I think, last year.
Or maybe that was, okay, so maybe that wasn't around the recruitment time. Okay, I thought it was more recent than that, but okay. But and like Pete, is a person who lives with disability and is primarily Oh, pedestrian and a transit rider, right? So
Transit rider, you're
there are
right.
like three things that, okay,
We kind of missed, we missed that.
Maybe it's worth reaching out to Pete and see if.
He's already on the LTD board as well, and he gets called on a lot.
you could ask Lila if that'd be a way that.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you still have the people, who and because as I recall, last time we had a lot of applications.
Mhm. Yeah, there were 15+ applications.
Yeah, are those people invited to, and can they be considered again without having to totally redo their application?
I don't know.
The application is kind of a bear.
Yeah, it's got a lot of short answer questions on it. I could double check with Shane and maybe review the ATC bylaws. I'm not sure if there's much in there about applying, but we could come up with a policy on the reapplication
Yeah.
process.
Mhm.
Because we have their responses and we haven't changed the application.
Mhm.
So we could even send them their application and ask if there's anything they'd like to adjust on it to
Mm-hmm.
reapply or something like that. Just as an FYI, I have begun recruiting. So I was like what you were saying, I was like, I'll get it out there into the community and we'll see, and I can double check with the ATC, like, do we want to like really push it? Do we want to do a medium push for filling these positions? But it did go out in the InMotion newsletter, and then it's kind of been on social media, and some of our partners have posted it around as well. And we have gotten 5 applications already. And the deadline is weeks away. So I think we'll probably get a good number more, and hopefully we can be thinking about this. Are we missing any perspectives? I'm definitely hearing folks who don't bike, who walk and use transit as maybe a missing perspective. Are there any other things that are kind of at the front of people's minds?
And certainly people with disabilities, it's conversation on sidewalks and stuff, it could be worth getting a couple. People with.
Okay.
Geographic representation is always a goal, but always difficult. Always hard.
Yeah.
Well, ethnicity is always an issue too,
Mhm.
and, people follow.
Yeah.
I have some folks in mind that I want to pass it on to as well. Like, I know there's some people that are passionate about transportation that work for Homes for Good, who's a good friend of mine as well.
Okay.
They bike around a lot, and they're also connected to a lot of like community-based organizations. So I feel like maybe I can get them to like be stoked.
Now that we're meeting in person, it's already a little bit more fun. Okay, so moving on, I have one more slide for us to look at where to find the application and the info, and basically segueing right off of what you were just saying, like share this with your networks. If you have folks who you think would be a good fit, or you have friends, or you have connections in the community, letting people know that we are recruiting for ATC. We have a few seats open. And you can direct them to the City of Eugene Transportation website. If they just type in, I think on Google, if you just type in like Active Transportation Committee Eugene, it'll bring up the page. It's also on our Instagram and our Facebook, and it's in the InMotion newsletter as well. So it should be in everybody's inbox through the newsletter. So you can share it with people you know, and hopefully we can get some of those missing perspectives on the committee and at the table.
KLCC often announces openings on various committees and stuff like that, and I don't think that costs anything. I think they just do it as a public service, so. PSA was on.
Yeah, that's a good
KLCC,
idea. Because I do think thinking about missing perspectives, radio can sometimes be an avenue to reach people that are hard to reach in other ways, like through social media and stuff like that.
I think all the public radio stations will do that. KMTR,
Okay.
not KRAX, they don't say anything. But KMTR would be another good one.
Okay.
Different audience.
And we'll do a little bit of a analysis as the staff. We'll do an analysis where we kind of pull up the current members and look at their wards and things like that to kind of see if we're missing any gaps from a demographic perspective as well.
Do they,
sharing was fine for this, isn't that
do they have to be citizens of Virginia? I'm thinking about people in unincorporated.
This is actually something I really wanted to talk with you all about. So right now in the ATC bylaws, it says that the ATC members must reside within the UGB of Eugene. And I did have somebody email me who was interested, and she lives in Bonita, but she bikes into Eugene every day. So she'd be a really interesting person to have because she's a rural bike commuter, but she doesn't live in the UGB. And so I had to tell her, like, our bylaws state that you have to reside within the UGB, but I think that would be, and I maybe could double check with Rob and perhaps other legal people. If that's something we could change as the ATC, if we wanted to revisit that section of the bylaws, and if we think that that is a good bylaw or not, and kind of go from
I
there.
don't
I
think
mean,
we
there
could
is-
change that. I think city advisory committee is, you have to live within the UGB, but we can talk more about that offline. I
Okay.
could be wrong about that.
Yeah, because
Well,
that's what
there's a
Shane was
way.
kind of like, I don't know if this is like a legal thing or just a bylaws thing, so maybe us as staff can do a little bit more research and we'll bring it back to you all and let you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a Lane County sort of ATC equivalent.
There is, and that's what I shared with this person who asked me. I was like, here's a bunch of other ways you could be
Yeah.
involved. There's other Lane County committees and all like BEST and all sorts of things that you could do that isn't this. So that's another like maybe reason to keep this one Eugene, just because there's a Springfield one and then there's a Lane County one. So,
But it is by UGB, so people who live in River Road and they don't happen to be city residents, they still are included.
exactly, like if you're just
Yeah.
one block off the UGB, it's like a little bit kind of odd. So I think it's something we might have to check internally and then get back to you all about. Yeah. Other thoughts or anything about recruitment? I will say that for those of you who are leaving us next month, we're gonna put some time in the agenda to have like a little celebration and gratitude moment, so don't feel like this isn't your last meeting, next meeting's your last meeting.
And you're still welcome to come, and you can still be on subcommittees. So. Yeah.
Wait, can non-members can be on subcommittees?
I think we sort of casually decided that.
Okay, gotcha.
Good idea.
Yeah.
That guy is still interested.
Yeah, I know.
We're getting filmed and we're
Yeah.
getting smoked on.
So,
Yeah, it's funny that happened because when I was setting up the meeting, I was noticing these windows and I was like, it's kind of odd. There's no curtains.
Yeah.
There might be one that night.
We are broadcasting live.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll
Still got their
Put
TV sitting
up
there.
the YouTube information.
Mm.
That's not something you can easily install in bicycle.
Oh, yeah, I made a slide for this.
This would be a good time, if we had food at our meetings, to go grab a snack. Willa decided we needed a little 5-minute break just to stretch, go to the bathroom if we need to.
We're back.
So we caught the bit of that.
Okay, so we wanted to have a little report out from each group. Let's have the online people go first. What did you talk about? Don't all jump in there at once.
Daniel, were you writing that down?
Yeah. Yeah, so looking over the list, we had a couple things that stood out. One was about Pearl, and I remember that Alan had brought up the just the process for removing a bike lane, and how that wasn't symmetric with removing of parking spaces. So there was a period for public comment, if I remember, and we were still curious about where that stood. Also the bond measure and sort of an equity rubric, an idea about like sort of how equity is being built into it in the transparent way. So is that economic equity? Is it racial equity? Those kind of factors. Let's see, what else did we touch on? The path etiquette, sort of the problem with not being able to geofence individuals' vehicles that are moving through, the large e-bikes and the bike speed. And is there really anything more besides the signs that have been put up that we could do? the protected bike lanes. Had come up that basically we know of some people that are dodging 13th because it's been a slowdown because of the protected bike lane. And so that's obviously not a goal of the protected bike lane. So are there ways that we can improve that? I think that we have given some feedback, and some of that can be taken easily and some of it might take longer to implement. And brought up the NAFTO guidelines and how there are ways that we could speed that up and make it a little better. Franklin, I think that's just an ongoing conversation about sort of what are the goals for that and how good pedestrian and bike integration with the roundabouts can be handled. The transparency around Vision Zero and kind of the climate action plan is something that's been on my mind. I feel like I'm not super plugged into any reporting that's happening on Vision Zero, or just more transparency around how that and how the climate action plan are leading to infrastructure and various decisions. And then communication, sort of like ATC's views on the communication of the policy and of maybe taking a bit more aggressive stance on how we talk about car accidents and bike accidents and those kind of things, and relating that to one of the things that the Dutch folks were talking about the Kindermoort, and maybe that might be an explicit goal of ours to talk about in the future. And then kind of wrapping up was the just overall as ATC, how is our input being taken? Where does feedback go? What are the kind of paths that's filtering through? And what can we do to make our time more efficient that way? And then also just compliments to Mary and Sue for doing a lot this year to make things be very actionable and to just get a lot done. So our thanks were passed on to them.
Wow, that was a dynamite report. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, who's
We were one, we'll go, I guess, second. So we talked a lot about the things we liked, and the things we liked were kind of things where we had more concrete asks. And so we talked about the farmers market bike parking and how that was it was a really specific thing we could ask for. Same thing, we want to do more of providing feedback on designs, because it allows us to have an opportunity to do something concrete, or at least assert a concrete kind of position on what we'd like to see. The other thing, we talked about 13th and kind of whether or not we had an impact. The city was kind of always planning to do some updates. How much did our feedback impact that? I don't know. The city, started out saying it's not perfect and we're going to continue to improve it. So that was one place we weren't sure. But we also talked a lot about kind of enjoying hearing the perspectives of either other ATC members or kind of outside experts, like what are other communities doing, like the Think Bike workshop, but also Clarissa's presentation on trip to Europe. We talked about, who else would we want to hear from, like maybe Safe Routes to School staff, Lane County staff. Are there, other people from other communities who might want to come in virtually now that we're hybrid and give us a presentation on kind of what their best practices are? We talked at the sidewalks, like what are all these other communities doing? Do we have resources? Not only resources, like can we pay people to come, but do we know people? Do we have, connections with people in other communities who are doing innovative things to have them come in and give us a presentation and teach us something? So those are the things we liked.
okay, thank you. And
Okay, so just looking at the questions, one of the questions has to do with what would you like to know more about? And there was some discussion about needing explanations of acronyms and people and staff for folks who are new to the committee, and that it would really help have an updated cheat sheet available both online as well as physically. I'd also suggested the possibility of having some kind of buddy system, so that people who are attending the meeting for the first few times could then sort of say, okay, what were they talking about? With someone who is more experienced.
The Sustainability Commission has a thing in the middle of the jar. You have to put in a quarter every time you use an acronym.
Zip it up.
And just to clarify about the acronyms, not just what the acronym stands for, but like transportation, TSP, Transportation System Plan. That's really helpful, Transportation System Plan. But saying what is that, just this is made, who makes this plan? This is a plan made by, it covers this. So that there's some idea of the hierarchy of how these things fit together, because when you're new, I mean, it's just like, what?
Yeah. One of the questions was, what was valuable this year? There was also, similar to what Martin said, there's a talk about tangible accomplishments, and the farmers market was also discussed, as well as the parking or reduced parking at the Camas Ridge School. Those are two accomplishments this year. Small, but tangible, satisfying. And then related to what we'd like to see, and this is actually related to a topic that will be on the agenda probably in December, which is maybe a more formalized process for ATC to give feedback to staff, so that we know how our comments will be used and how they'll be received and implemented. Is there anything else
Feedback on the feedback.
Yeah, anything else I missed?
We talked about a little bit about communication too, and echoing the, your group, that we'd like it to be a little bit hard hitting. The city's outreach communication about bicycling is, it's very cheerful. It's very positive, it's very cheerful, but there's a place for harder hitting communication, and like the Kindermont, which is it's very dark indeed, but there's statistics, big cars, having information out there. Large vehicles cause more accidents. Just it's a fact. It's not an opinion. It's a fact. It's cheaper. E-bikes cheaper to run than trucks. Those kind of. I just feel if we're going to change a culture, there's other ways to do it. It's really fun to bike.
It is though.
It is. It is.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're a little behind schedule here, so I'll shuffle along here, but thanks for your thoughts, and it's wonderful to get to actually talk to people, Okay, so our info share stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is me. I just have a few little info shares for you all. So the first one on the agenda is detours, and I wanted to share. Oh, I thought I had it open. Okay, I gotta open a thing real quick. From Reed, who has been kind of working on the detours, and he sent me an email with just a little bit of info to update you all. So we just real quick, very specifically, we've been working on the detour that's over by where like Alder and the courthouse and 8th and the river path kind of meet up, and it was very funky, and that's actually my daily commute. So it's been, for me personally, like a big issue. Reed and Catherine went out there. They've been working with the project manager. It is technically resolved right now. The detour arrow is pointing down the path. You keep going, there's another detour arrow that points up a street that gets you around it. But it is inconvenient and out of the way, so it's still, maybe not perfect. That's one very specific example. On the larger page of detour stuff, Reed did have a meeting with some of the public works engineering folks, and basically they're creating a team that's going to identify best detour practices that have happened over the last 4 years. Things that have worked well, things that haven't been working well, and create a presentation to share with other city divisions. So that would be other folks who are doing projects that maybe aren't following the TPAR, which is the temporary pedestrian access plan or something.
Route.
Route, that'd be, yeah, which basically just means what is the detour plan? So they're gonna share that with the other city divisions, and then they're gonna convene the city divisions to basically implement the best practices. So not only are they gonna be like, here's the best practices, they actually want to create a way to implement those best practices. And then from there, create a comprehensive guide to share with other folks who are doing right-of-way projects, right? So that'd be like eWeb or those private projects that happen. And that's more of a long-term goal. So the upcoming goal is creating the team, getting the best practices. And then the long-term goals are to identify large projects that are going to have major right-of-way impacts, like multifamily housing developments or like the YMCA, for example, and really make sure that those have very clear and well thought out access plans so that things like what's happening at the YMCA don't happen again.
Nice to say.
Yeah.
So we've worked on, like Alan, this is Alan's second go around on the ATC. It used to be called the BPAC, and we were working on this back before Alan was on the BPAC. And so it's like, so it's keep on us on this, because sometimes what happens is we like get distracted and we hit inertia internally. And I think we're gonna nail it this time and get it right, but it's hard. And it's like, there's like our own capital projects, so the things we're building, which is, that's what we're gonna make sure we get that right first, and then try to apply what we learned to like the utility when Northwest Natural and eWeb were doing work in the right of way, or private development like the YMCA. So those, you know, that, and those are all different work groups in the city that that oversee those different things.
Yeah.
So,
And what Reed said is one of the long-term goals is to create a training for any permit holder who has a permit to operate in the right of way. They have to take a training on the best practices for the pedestrian access and bike access routes. So that's like one of those things.
So can there be a way, though, so that the public has one person to go to? Because right now, if there's problems, it's, you know, it's very, I mean, you have, everything you're doing sounds wonderful. I'm thrilled to hear that. It's great. But, you know, if you're the person who comes, you know, and sees there's a problem,
yeah, that's a good idea.
you need to have there needs to be one person in the city who then directs it out. So that you're not, you know, and I'd like to see that phone number on the projects.
Like on the detour sign.
On the
or something.
detour
Yeah.
sign, so that it wasn't difficult for a member of the public, you know, the little old lady in her walker to, you know, get her grandchild to dial the cell phone. And, you know, moan about that, because I think that's the missing piece here. I love what you're doing, but it doesn't help the, you know, the frustrated user.
Public kind of.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a really good idea.
And I'm gonna suggest, Willow's gonna mention that to Reed, but I'm gonna mention this to Jennifer Willer, who's our city engineer, kind of oversees the whole division, because she's also, like, that's where I think we're more likely to be successful this go around, is like, she's more involved than previous city engineers were in this exercise.
Yeah.
But I think she, you know, I'm gonna suggest that to her, and she's looking at how to create more of like a staff effort. We've actually have some, just as an example, like we have people that inspect what are called privately engineered public improvements. So like the work that's being done between Fifth Street Market up there on Pearl is the acronym is a PEPI, really engineered public improvement. So that's when a private entity is building something within the city right of way, which is like the street area. So we actually used to just have like engineers that might have time available go inspect those. Now we have like a small team of 2 people that's all they do is inspect those. So like we're trying to expand on that idea with people. We're looking at actually within this budget process of asking for people that would just inspect traffic control for not just our own projects, but for private projects and that sort of thing, and utilities and that sort of thing.
I'd say when you're thinking about your best practices too, is have people think about, you know, would, you know, it's the 880 thing. Would an 8-year-old child, you know, or a 10-year-old coming from Roosevelt by themselves, or somebody using a walker, be able to manage this? And that's when they're designing their detours, you know, because I think that when someone's sort of thinking about a detour, all the thing is like, oh, an arrow over here, yeah, but they don't think about your grandchild, your mother. Can they, you know, yeah, can, you know, would you put people you love and let them use this detour?
Yeah.
So just trying to, you know, make it a little bit more personal.
Sure.
Okay, we'll definitely pass along some of that. feedback, and like Rob said, we should like keep revisiting this, which I think we will, because detours are happening all the time and they often are bad. So I think this is gonna keep coming up.
And Reed's been incredibly responsive, but I
Yeah.
just hate to keep nagging
Yeah.
him.
It's a bad use of his time. He has roads to design.
Okay, well, I've got another thing, which is leaves. It's leaf season. This is like a classic seasonal issue for people biking, is leaves in the bike lanes. I know that we talk about this all the time and it's like, who uses it? But we have the iBike Eugene. I'm gonna put it up here. This is a web-based app. You can use it on your computer. You can use it on your phone. It's there's a leaf button. So when you go to it, you can click leaves and you can put where you are. And this directly goes to the leaf folks. And they have a system, and this is kind of unique to Eugene because we're such a bicycling city, but they have a system where they can prioritize streets that are like people bike on these streets to approach the leaves first. And it's one of the main reasons we don't have like a strict street sweeping schedule, is because we need the street sweepers to be able to divert and go to streets that are having like bike lane obstruction leaf issues. We also do a big education campaign for property owners to not put their leaves in the bike lane, because it's a confusing messaging where it's like, put your leaves in the road, we'll pick them up, put them in the bike lane. So there's also a big education component, and I think that's something that you all help us with, is that like leaves should stay in the yard until like, and they should not be in the bike lane. Like, do not put your leaves in the bike lane. And there are it's in our in motion newsletter. I actually think I have it right here.
It seems like, most leaves can go in your yard debris cart. You don't have a lot of other stuff in there this time of year, so it's
Yeah. So if you want to review, this is the article we just had in the last In Motion, and that's where it says, it needs you to put them in your yard debris container, contact your local service, and the local services in town do have additional stuff that they can do during leaf season to assist property owners with their leaves, and the property owners can contact their service and get help with that. So
It might also be helpful just to have some way of letting motorists know, sometimes the bicyclist is not gonna be riding over in the bike lane where you'd like him to be, because he can see that pile of leaves coming up, so. Yeah, kind of some slack.
yeah, that's also worth mentioning, is some messaging we could do around just like during leaf season, there may be people biking in places where they normally wouldn't be because their bike lane is full of leaves. But if you do notice the big leaf pile, I know you might be going somewhere and getting off and putting it on the iBike Eugene is inconvenient, but you could also make a mental note of where it is when you get there afterwards. You could sort of list it. While I'm talking about, was there anything else about?
I just wanted to note that that leaf program of getting the leaves out of the bike lanes first, and the campaign for public information was something that the ATC put a lot of effort into many years ago. It was probably 10
was involved in that too, yeah.
10 or more years ago, and it was one of the most successful ongoing projects I think that the ATC's done over time. So
Nice. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that.
I feel like we do, I don't know if we still do it, but we would do mailers to people who lived on bike lanes to make sure that they weren't.
Yep.
Right, they'll be using the bike lane, but we can check with Brian to see if we still do that.
Yeah, let me check with Brian. If we do that, that probably is my job.
No, it's probably Brian's, but you should, but it'll be good for you to know what his average is.
That's
And Brian is Brian Richardson, who's our public.
information officer for all of it, Public Works. So he knows like everything. He's really good at communicating.
And I just want to mention that there are some businesses that are really good at cleaning out bike lanes, like I think it's the barbecue place on 13. And I don't know if that person's the owner or whatever, but every time I'm biking, there's somebody blowing the leaves out of the bike lane and collecting them. So as you're doing communication, I don't know if there's a way to give a shout out to, businesses that do a really good job of this.
Are you talking about Hot Mamas?
No, it's like.
Is it
Pearl and.
Building 10.
Tim and Eric's and I knew.
I would stay at barbecue joint.
I think it's a barbecue.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know his name.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's also this parked in bikeway button on the iBike Eugene, and that is to indicate that there is a vehicle that is parked in the bike lane. And the reason I'm bringing this up now is because our team is actually about to pull data from iBike Eugene to see if there's hotspots in town where this is a recurring issue. So being able to report this does help us because we use this data in like a more long-term vision as well to sort of identify like, are there places in town where this happens a lot? Why is it happening a lot? Is it a single repeat offender, or is it maybe unclear signage or unclear infrastructure? So just another reminder to like use it if you can, because it does help us in our.
I need to start reporting.
I know, I mean, it's so callous disregard, actually. It's
Oh.
like-
Well, I know that.
Just getting the word out.
Right, that's another issue, right, Josh?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
That's okay.
I think you could put it parked in
Oh,
the sidewalk
yeah.
within this parked in bikeway. I think it's still gonna go into our MMS and we can address it, so.
Casco Mobility staff have, iBike Eugene on their work phones, so when they're out in the field all day.
Oh, nice.
Great.
Yeah, that is helpful. Okay, let me look at this list, because I know we're getting towards the end. Okay, I think the last two things are the Franklin Boulevard, which I think is more of a ATC share out.
Yeah, it's a shorter time, so if you don't have a whole lot to say.
Okay,
that's
yeah,
good.
to keep it really brief, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. I should probably have the date ready. But we met on a Thursday afternoon. Rob was there with us, as well as Dave Reeser, my boss, to give some information from the university perspective. And so thank you to the committee members who were able to attend. We talked through the whole corridor with Rob and produced some notes that I sent along to Rob. I don't really have any firm conclusions, because I think there are varying opinions about the corridor. I think one point of agreement is that we all want to understand how the roundabouts are going to work, specifically for people on bikes and pedestrians. And so I think more information from the city, as the city knows more, would be really appreciated.
And so we're gonna be doing an official round of public outreach in the later this year. And that would be a good time for you guys to maybe provide more input. Because I think this was more like trying to understand it to a great extent.
Have there been conversations with the business owners along the way, that some of them are complaining on social media already?
We have not met with all of them, but we have met with George Rohde. Ding, ding, ding. And what else? The Hirons we met with and some of the others. We haven't met, our goal is that when we do this next round, we will be meeting with all of the businesses and property owners along the corridor.
And, you know, this is something that we actually talked about in our committee meeting, is sometimes the committee could be helpful, that if you get, you know, for example, many of us have had their cars serviced by George Rohde for the last 30 years and known him well.
Right.
So, you know, I'd be happy to argue with him about bike paths. We argue all the time.
Good to know.
Is that kind of,
Yep, that about covers it.
Well, thank
I
you,
sent
Josh,
the
for
notes
taking
out
notes.
to
Yeah, that was
everybody,
about
so.
getting the site on it. That was very nice work. Thank you.
and thanks for just putting that all together. It
Yeah.
was- Yeah, it was really.
It was
great.
helpful just to be able to read it.
The BPAC share out, we don't have our BPAC representative, and I don't think we have Andrea either, so I guess
We're gonna
that's.
take this down so we can see.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
So that takes us to the subcommittee report back. Did any subcommittees have anything to report?
I'll report from the infrastructure subcommittee, which is just, we continue to discuss Franklin on Monday. So I think Josh basically covered us.
And I don't, the communications committee really couldn't find a time to work. How about the education programs? We meet the next week.
Yeah. Education met. We mostly just talked about moving ahead with the plans to engage 4J on some of the issues with biking and busing and all that stuff. And I don't have my notes directly in front of me, but that's what I remember. Mary, feel free to fill in if I missed anything.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
I did just remember, speaking of 4J and stuff, we are gonna be tabling on Monday on the Fern Ridge Path. We're gonna be out there from 2 to 6 PM next to Cesar Chavez. And we're running a Be Safe, Be Seen, giving out lights and reflective materials to folks who are biking by just because it's getting dark really early. So if any of you happen to want to swing by and say hi to us, we'll be over there on the Fern Ridge Path Monday afternoon.
This coming Monday?
Yeah, the 14th. If you need some bike lights.
Okay, unless other people have things to report or ask or whatever.
I do have one thing I want to say. So Larissa Varela, who was a planner with the city for many years. She left the city in the spring. She was on vacation in Mexico and got into a significant car crash. She's in the hospital right now in serious condition. So she could definitely use people's thoughts. There is also a GoFundMe if that is something you would like to contribute to. You can find it by going to GoFundMe and searching for her name. But in my opinion, many of the good things that have happened for bicycling and walking in Eugene over the past decade or so, she's had a hand in. And so, yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Is she in Eugene? in hospital
No,
or in
she was
Mexico?
on vacation in Mexico.
So she's in Mexico.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, on that somber note.
Yeah, sorry.
I got something uplifting to send us out on.
It's sort of related, but I'll mention it anyway. Bike is happening, I think, this week, and it's a sort of a conference on people building community bike shops all over the world, and it's virtual this year, and it's sort of you know, you can register and donate whatever you want, or you cannot donate anything, so it's worth checking out. People are interested in sort of bike.
I got a whimsical thing. But Ferdinand, Shane Rhodes on our team was contacted. He participates in this thing called Warm Showers, I think it's called, where people are doing bike rides. Someone contacted him who's riding from Prudhoe Bay, Alaska to Argentina with a CoMotion tandem bike, and he's giving people rides along the way. So Shane is going to put this. The plan is Shane's going to put this person up and then ride with the person on the guy's tandem to Reedsport, and then Shane's trying to figure out how he's gonna get home. So if anyone wants to drive Shane home from Reedsport, I can give you a cell phone number.
We'll take a tandem and ride in bed.
So City of Springfield's looking for input on bike facilities. They have a bike facility survey. They want to know, where do you want to see a bike share hub in Springfield? Where do you think we should operate in Springfield, as well as any bike parking places that you think that should be in Springfield? So
I shared it on the Eugene Transportation Facebook
You
page,
did?
so that
Okay.
would be an easy place to find
yeah,
it.
it's also on the Peace Health Rides newsletter too. You can look there to get that.
And if you don't get the Peace Health Rides newsletter, you can sign up.
You can do that by signing up for bike share.
Okay, anything else? Well, thank you very much, and thank you all out in TV land. Good to see you guys.
You guys feel like the bike racks that Jane was able to get around the park blocks is helping with the farmers market?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Oh, yeah, they
We
use.
certainly haven't with you.
But it's just ironic that those came